Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are charting the future of a part of the UK economy that is massive, essential, yet somehow almost invisible to most people. We are diving deep into the UK maritime sector, a real hidden giant that, well, it forms the very backbone of global trade.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because the definition of maritime, it often just stops at ships in the public mind. But our sources show the true scope is colossal. I mean, we're talking everything from the glamorous wet side, super yachts, cruise liners, fishing fleets, to the complex dry side. And that includes things like naval architecture, high-tech manufacturing, ports, logistics, and all those professional business services, insurance, legal services, the works.
And the numbers alone are just staggering. They really highlight why this deep dive is so critical for you, the listener. Ports alone, get this, handle a staggering 95% of all goods entering and leaving the UK.
95%.
Yeah, think about that. Almost every consumer product, every piece of manufacturing equipment, it all relies on this sector working properly. It directly adds something like $7.6 billion to the economy and employs over 100,000 people just in the ports.
And given that huge foundational role, the government realized, quite rightly, that they couldn't just sort of coast into the future. They knew they needed a really robust long-term plan to secure the talent pipeline, especially with seismic changes coming, like automation and shifting global trade patterns. So our focus today is this document, the Maritime 2050 People Route Map. And it's not just, aspirational stuff. It's meant to be an operational action plan.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really analyze this blueprint. We're looking at how the government and the industry plan to transform a sector that, let's be honest, often has this outdated, maybe slightly archaic image, transform it into a modern magnet for high-tech, high-paying jobs between now and 2050.
And the whole strategy is built around 5 key areas, 5 pillars, they call them. These have to be tackled pretty much simultaneously to secure that future workforce.
Okay, what are they?
Right. So first, inspiring people. This is all about dramatically improving public awareness and, frankly, the image of the sector.
Makes sense.
Second, expanding the talent pool. This is primarily about tackling the severe lack of diversity we see right now.
A big one.
Third, skills and training. Basically, making sure the workforce is future-proofed against all the technological disruption heading its way.
Okay.
Fourth, career progression. So guaranteeing clear, visible, accessible pathways to lifelong careers, whether that's at sea or on shore.
Right. Keeping people in the sector.
And finally, number 5, the essential social framework. This covers things like modern employment rights, welfare, and crucially, mental health support.
It sounds incredibly comprehensive. But before we jump into the solutions, we really need to get our heads around the scale of the problem they're trying to fix. Let's start with the current situation. The big challenges and the talent gaps that are actually threatening the UK's position here.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the main challenge is it's almost a paradox. The sector's this hidden giant. It's absolutely fundamental to the economy, yet, as you said, it suffers from this massive lack of public awareness. Most people just don't realize the sheer breadth of career options beyond, the picture of a ship or a dock worker.
And that failure to communicate its importance, its modernity, is costing the industry big time. If the public doesn't appreciate that this sector involves data science, cybersecurity, naval architecture, cutting-edge stuff, they're just not going to consider it a viable career path. So this lack of awareness feeds directly into what they call the talent crunch.
Yeah, industry reports pretty much across the board confirm significant talent shortfalls. It's particularly bad for skilled roles like certificated seafarers, marine engineers, and also those filling highly specialized shore-based positions. The sector's just not attracting enough new people.
So what are the main reasons behind this crunch? It sounds like a bit of an internal demographic time bomb mixed with some pretty tough external competition.
That's exactly it. Internally, you've got a significant aging workforce, a lot of experience heading for retirement. And as these older workers leave, the sector faces this knowledge drain, this experience gap that takes years to fill. And at the same time, the actual work is changing incredibly fast. It's becoming much more reliant on high-level STEM skills, which, creates a mismatch between the current training pipeline and what they actually need in the future.
And then externally, you've got other industries aggressively chasing those exact same STEM graduates.
Yeah.
I mean, if a logistics expert can work for, say, Amazon in a nice office, why choose a career that might mean long periods away from home, or maybe is perceived as having lower status?
Precisely. Other sectors often seem to offer better overall packages, maybe higher starting pay, perhaps better work-life balance, or just a clearer route up the ladder. The maritime sector has really struggled to shake off that traditional image and prove it can compete in the modern job market.
Which brings us squarely to what seems like the single biggest failure point flagged up in the sources: the diversity deficit. That sort of aged, stereotypical image isn't just a marketing issue, it's deeply structural, isn't it?
Oh, the data here is stark. It's frankly quite shocking. The sector struggles massively with gender balance. As of 2017, only 3% of UK certificated officers in the Merchant Navy were women. Now, the source does note a tiny rise to 4% since then, but honestly, that figure is devastatingly low.
4%. Just to give you some perspective on that.
Yeah.
The proportion of women MPs in Parliament is significantly higher. Even the tech sector, which gets a lot of flack for its lack of diversity, still averages higher female representation than 4%. We're talking about a critical, highly skilled industry that's effectively shut off from half the national talent pool.
And this imbalance was really thrown into sharp focus because of a regulatory change. Legislation came in requiring companies with 250 or more employees to publish their gender pay gap data. And that transparency provided hard evidence. It confirmed this wasn't just perception, it was a systemic failure in recruitment and opportunity.
Right, so the penny dropped. To solve the talent crunch, they absolutely have to solve the diversity crisis first, which I guess leads us neatly into that first pillar: inspiration and coordination.
Well, the initial realization was that the industry was kind of suffering from initiative fatigue. There were lots of good efforts and, STEM events, school visits, careers fairs, but they were all fragmented, often overlapping. And ultimately, they just failed to project a single unified vision. So the core recommendation in the route map is to professionalize all this and bring some coherence to career promotion.
Okay, so that required creating a powerful coordinating body, the single industry body, or SIB. Let's break down what its specific job is.
Right. The SIB is designed to be the single, central, professional voice for the entire sector when it comes to promoting careers. Its main goal is to ensure this no wrong door approach. So imagine a student who's interested in marine biology or maybe port logistics or even maritime law. The SIB makes sure that whichever specific organization they contact first, they get consistent, high-quality, comprehensive info about all the different pathways available right across the wet and dry sides.
I get the why fragmentation is inefficient, obviously, but how does the SIB structure actually guarantee this no wrong door thing, especially if it's replacing existing efforts? Is it just a whole new layer of bureaucracy?
No, and that's actually quite a clever part of the strategy designed to make the most of limited resources. The SIB is basically an evolution of the existing Careers Promotion Forum, the CPF. So by building on that existing foundation, they avoid duplication and they can bring worthwhile activities under one strategic roof. It got £250,000 in pump prime funding for the 2019-20 financial year, and it was tasked with getting operational really quickly within 6 to 12 months.
Okay, so the aim is to stop individual companies just promoting their own jobs and start promoting maritime as a whole career destination, which then helps everyone. Now, let's circle back to that diversity deficit. How is this central body meant to tackle that shocking 4% gender gap?
Well, that specific, very difficult challenge falls mainly to the Women in Maritime Task Force. This was actually set up just before the route map came out back in 2018. Their goal is laser-focused, dramatically increase the number of women, particularly in senior leadership roles across the whole maritime sector.
And it sounds like they moved past just talking about it and really focused on practical structural solutions. What are the key tools they've actually delivered?
Yeah, and the interview pool is even more innovative for tackling recruitment bias. It's basically a system that lets companies who lack diversity internally and therefore might lack diverse perspectives on their hiring panels to effectively loan senior maritime women from other organizations to sit on their interview panels. It injects diversity right into the decision-making process for important roles.
That is genuinely clever. It's like a temporary fix that forces that institutional bias to confront external diverse expertise right where it matters at the hiring stage.
Yeah.
But does the task force only focus on gender?
No, it doesn't. Building on the success they had with the gender-focused stuff, the task force's scope was deliberately widened in 2020. They're now using that momentum to look at diversity much more broadly, so addressing issues around nationality, ethnicity, disability, other protected characteristics. The framework they developed for gender is being adapted to help all underrepresented groups.
And underpinning all of this, there's a big government-backed campaign to fundamentally shift the public image.
Yes, exactly. The government is funding the industry-led Maritime and Me initiative. This is designed to be the main marketing campaign, tackling that perception of the sector being old-fashioned or just for men. It specifically targets younger people and a wider range of people, making sure the SIB has a modern, compelling content to promote these future high-tech maritime careers.
Right, so we've covered getting people interested in tackling the diversity issue. Now let's pivot to pillar 3, skills. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, because the whole training pipeline is being re-engineered to keep up with technology. We're talking autonomy, AI, smart ports.
Absolutely. Technology and innovation are really the engine driving this whole 2050 strategy. Things like autonomy, data analytics, digital services. They're creating completely new, high-value, STEM-based jobs. The opportunity is huge. Attract new talent with exciting, potentially high-paying careers. But actually seizing that opportunity means you need really good forward-looking analysis of what skills will be needed.
And that leads us to the creation of that second major strategic body, the Maritime Skills Commission, or MSC. So if the SIB is the promotional arm, the outward face, the MSC is more like the strategic brain.
That's a perfect way to put it. The MSC is a key government recommendation,
Yeah.
and its role is purely analytical and strategic. It brings together top experts from industry, academia, government to report on current and future skills needs across the entire sector. Wet side, dry side, professional services, everything. And they do this on a comprehensive 5-yearly cycle.
Why the 5-year cycle specifically?
Well, simply because the pace of technological change demands it. The MSC is specifically tasked with looking at current training, predicting future skills gaps, especially related to huge developments like full maritime autonomy, and making sure the curriculum, everywhere, stays relevant and up to date. It's about being proactive, assessing needs ahead of time rather than reacting after the fact.
I have to ask about funding and structure again. How do they make sure the MSC actually have the clout, the capacity to do this massive analytical job?
Well, it got similar startup funding to the SIB, £300,000 in pump prime money for 2019-20. Structurally, they give an annual update on the skills situation, but the big deliverable is that major, detailed state-of-the-nation report every 5 years. That's the foresight piece, looking ahead towards 2050, and that's what's designed to influence government policy, investment decisions, and the focus of training providers.
Okay, let's talk about the immediate training improvements being made, particularly for seafarers. The sources suggest regulatory changes are actually needed just to use modern training methods.
That's right. Historically, seafarer training has been very heavily regulated, often tied to quite traditional physical methods, old school, you might say. So the government is now recommended to bring in the right regulatory changes to unlock the benefits of new tech like virtual reality, VR, and augmented reality, AR, in training simulations. The long-term goal here is for the UK to actually lead the world in setting the framework for these new training standards by 2050. Using technology to make training safer, more effective, and hopefully attract more digitally savvy recruits.
This kind of shift needs serious investment in the people choosing sea careers, though. We saw a huge financial commitment mentioned for supporting new cadets.
Yes, a really significant one. The government doubled the seafarer training budget, the SMART budget. It went up from $15 million to $30 million for the period up to 2024-25. And this isn't just for basic recruitment. This money is vital for supporting cadet officers through their training, which is very expensive, until they get their certificates of competency, their COCRILCs. It provides essential financial backing for young people entering the profession.
And beyond the sea, the growth in apprenticeships seems to be tackling the complexity of shore-based roles. The rise in numbers looks impressive, but where are the main growth areas?
Yeah, the number of people starting maritime apprenticeships more than doubled in just 3 years, from 89 up to 202. This growth really reflects how technically specialized the dry side is becoming. We're seeing the sector's first ever graduate apprenticeships for really technical roles, like marine technical superintendents and marine surveyors. And they're also developing new apprenticeship routes for harbor masters and small vessel engineers. It's about making sure the whole logistics chain gets fresh, properly trained talent.
It's good to see these abstract strategy points translate into real-world action. The source material gives some great examples of companies really embracing this skills revolution.
Absolutely. Take Pendennis Shipyard. They build and refit superyachts, a very high-skill niche market. Apprentices make up a third of their entire workforce. They've recruited 250 apprentices since 1998. They see it not just as training, but as a core strategic pipeline. The customized training ensures the apprentice fits the unique demands of the high-end refit world perfectly, and many go straight into management roles afterwards.
That tailored approach sounds much more effective than just relying on generic college courses.
It is, and you see the same focus on specialization in the ports too. Look at the Port of Tilbury. They realized that training people for complex, potentially dangerous jobs like operating huge cranes or straddle carriers needed to be super realistic but also safe. So they developed this innovative training suite with 360-degree simulators. It lets trainees handle scenarios they might rarely encounter in real life, like extreme weather or equipment failure, but in a totally controlled environment. It massively boosts competence and safety before they even touch the real machinery.
So the MSC's big picture role kind of ties all this together then. It's not just analyzing data, it's about anticipating what companies like Pendennis and Tilbury will need years down the line.
Precisely. They're specifically tasked with forging partnerships, government, industry, academia working together. They need to make sure that as technology advances, think autonomous trucks moving containers within a port, the training is already there for the remote operators or the data analysts needed to manage it. And crucially, the MSC is also responsible for overseeing reskilling opportunities for the existing workforce, making sure current employees aren't just left behind as automation speeds up. Okay, so if the sector successfully recruits and trains all this new talent, the next big hurdle is keeping them. Retention. Which brings us to the fourth pillar, career progression. This is absolutely vital because things like job security, pay, especially at the lower ranks, and the high cost of ongoing training are often cited as reasons people leave. If they can't see a clear path forward, they'll look elsewhere.
Right. And traditionally, the main way to get a good shore-based job like a port manager or a ship superintendent was you needed significant seagoing experience. That was almost the unwritten rule. But if the industry wants to attract top logistics people, STEM graduates, not just ex-seafarers, that traditional pathway surely has to change.
And this is where you see a really crucial cultural shift starting to happen. It's one that often meets resistance initially, but it's essential for growth. While seagoing experience is still obviously very valuable, some major ports are now actually changing their job descriptions. They're shifting the focus away from mandatory sea time towards demonstrable, transferable skills. Things like attention to detail, working effectively under extreme pressure, complex problem solving.
So they're basically saying that skills learned elsewhere are just as good, provided the company then invests in specific internal training, like that Tilbury simulator example we talked about, which really opens up the talent pool beyond the traditional maritime world.
Exactly. And to make this shift solid and transparent, the MSC has a big role to play in making those career pathways visible. They're mandated to work with all the training bodies to make sure that proper professional development plans are built into training programs right across the board for all roles.
So the idea is that a new recruit, whether they're a cadet starting out at sea or a graduate apprentice on shore, knows from day one what qualifications they need, what steps to take to move from a junior role up to a senior one.
That's precisely the vision. It's down as a medium-term goal, think 5 to 15 years, to make these career development plans standard practice. This should encourage lifelong learning and make it easier for people to move around, maybe from sea to shore, or even sideways between different bits of the maritime sector, like from fishing into commercial shipping with documented skills.
Now, let's zero in on a specific immediate source of talent that's often overlooked but has a massive amount of relevant technical experience.
Right.
The military.
Yes, galvanizing military talent. This is seen as a key short-term win. The Royal Navy is basically a ready-made pool of highly trained engineers, navigators, technicians. Their skills translate directly to civilian maritime needs. But there's always been this bureaucratic hurdle. It can be really complex and slow to get military technical qualifications officially recognized as equivalent civilian merchant Navy certificates.
Right, the conversion problem. So how does the strategy aim to smooth that out?
Well, the strategy specifically recommends supporting the Royal Navy's efforts to enhance its own accredited training centers. And crucially, the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, the MCA, is actively developing specific memorandums of understanding, MOUs. These MOUs create an official, streamlined conversion path for RN personnel, both officers and ratings, to get their merchant Navy qualifications recognized. This was targeted for 2020. It allows the UK to tap into the significant national resource quickly and efficiently, helping to plug some of those immediate skills gaps with experienced people.
Okay, so this fifth and final pillar feels like maybe the most human element of the whole strategy. What's really interesting here is a recognition that attracting talent, developing skills, it's all pretty useless if the basic working conditions and the welfare support aren't there, especially for people working at sea. This feels like the bedrock of long-term retention.
You're absolutely right. The job of a seafarer is uniquely demanding. Long periods away, isolation. It's tough. And while automation might reduce some physical dangers, it could actually increase the risk of social isolation, which is a real threat to mental health and ultimately safety.
And surely the most immediate practical way to fight isolation in the 21st century is connectivity. Access to the internet isn't just a nice to have anymore. It's vital for keeping skills up to date through continuous professional development and, perhaps most importantly, for mental well-being, staying connected with family and friends back home.
Definitely. But providing reliable connectivity at sea faces huge technical and economic hurdles. Cost is still the biggest barrier. For most commercial ships, satellite access is the only real option, and that's expensive and often comes with strict data limits. Plus, coverage isn't universal, particularly when ships are in remote areas like the Arctic or Antarctic.
And the source material flags up a serious tension here, too. The risk that connectivity could actually backfire. If it just means constant emails, demands, pressure from shore-based staff, couldn't that undermine the authority of the master on board, or even compromise safety by adding stress and fatigue?
That potential for sort of digital micromanagement is a very real risk. It needs careful balancing against the clear welfare benefits. So to get to grips with this complexity, the plan was for government, industry, and academia to set up an internet connectivity working group back in 2020. Their job is to figure out what needs doing, look at the tech and business barriers, and importantly, feed into the big international debates about allocating radio spectrum needed for future maritime comms globally.
Okay, let's shift to legal protections, the pillar of modernizing employment rights. The UK seems determined to make sure people working at sea get the same basic rights and protections as workers on land. This often means closing loopholes related to ships flying foreign flags, right?
Yes, and this is a major, really impactful short-term action targeted for 2020, extending the national minimum wage, NMW. The plan was to introduce legislation ensuring NMW protection applies to all seafarers working on domestic routes within UK territorial waters, regardless of which country's flag the vessel is registered under.
That sounds quite revolutionary. Just for a listener, can you explain why the ship's flag is usually so important and why this change is such a big deal for domestic seafarers?
Sure. Historically, ships registered under what are called flags of convenience. Often countries with much lower labor standards could legally operate in UK waters while paying their crews far less than the UK minimum wage. This effectively undercut UK-based crews and companies. By extending NMW protection to everyone working on these domestic routes, irrespective of the flag, the UK aims to close that loophole. It creates a more level playing field, offers better protection for workers, and hopefully helps retain seafarers in UK-based jobs.
And beyond UK law, the UK is also pushing hard on international standards through bodies like the IMO and the ILO. What are the global priorities there?
Yeah, the UK takes a strong leadership role internationally. They're focusing on three main areas. First, pushing for worldwide acceptance and standardization of seafarer ID cards, sorting out the ratification of ILO Convention 185. This just makes life easier for seafarers crossing borders. Second, tackling seafarer fatigue. The UK is actively pushing for stricter limits on working hours per shift. There is a strategy review planned for September 2020 to see how they could strengthen the current rules and improve safety.
Right.
And third, a really significant long-term goal, leading international efforts to stamp out modern-day slavery within the maritime industry. That means working closely with global agencies and enforcement bodies like Border Force.
And finally, let's touch on those really sensitive areas, culture and mental health. Because even with better pay and Wi-Fi, a toxic or non-inclusive onboard culture can just kill retention efforts, can't it?
Absolutely. It's a profound challenge, especially around cultural biases, gender, nationality, other protected characteristics. The MCA is actively developing specific mental health care guidelines and looking at mental resilience testing for seafarers that was planned for 2019-2021. It's recognizing that proactive mental health support is just as vital as physical checkups.
And the source material specifically mentioned sexual harassment as a major ongoing concern needing urgent cultural change.
Indeed. Sexual harassment demands a swift, strong, zero-tolerance response from employers. The UK is using its connections with industry social partners unions, employer groups, to push for clear protocols and real accountability. The success of the Women in Maritime Task Force is also helping here, giving female seafarers a stronger voice and platform to address these deep-rooted cultural problems and demand a safer, more inclusive environment. The overall aim has to be modernizing the culture so it actually matches the high-tech, future-focused industry they're trying to build.
So, wrapping this all up, what does it really mean? We've charted this incredibly comprehensive journey of the Maritime 2050 People Route Map. 5 critical pillars, from inspiring the next generation right through to sorting out the fundamental welfare framework.
And the key to actually making this vision happen seems to rest heavily on those 2 new bodies we discussed. You've got the coordinating, outward-facing SEB, whose job is to end the fragmentation and sell the sector with one clear, compelling voice. And then the analytical, long-term focused MSC, tasked with future-proofing training and constantly assessing skills needs every 5 years. These 2 groups, with their specific government funding, really are the engines designed to drive this change.
So the future maritime sector won't just look different because of the tech, autonomous ships. Smart ports will hopefully feel different for the people working in it. Clearer career paths, better legal protection, a dramatically improved culture. It's about shifting that perception from an old-fashioned industry you fall into to a modern, high-tech career you actively choose.
And if we connect this right back to the biggest picture, successfully implementing this route map is absolutely essential. This isn't just nice to have. This is about maintaining the UK's competitive edge as a leading global maritime nation. If that skills pipeline fails, the UK's entire logistics chain, remember, 95% of its trade is seriously vulnerable, especially as automation starts to radically reshape how everything moves.
The maritime industry is clearly betting big that new technology will attract new, highly skilled people, maybe offering more flexible shore-based roles. But we did note that tension, didn't we? Automation might reduce hazardous physical work, but it also risks increasing isolation for those still at sea. So if the strategy succeeds in modernizing the ship but fails to guarantee universal, affordable, and safe connectivity for every single seafarer, how will the sector make sure that the social framework, that last crucial piece of the puzzle, truly keeps pace with the speed of technological change? Something for you to mull over.